When it comes to the clown prince of crime, there are two performances that stand out the most as of yet, that being Jack Nicholson's version in '89 and Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. But which of these two Jokers can be considered more evil in their reign of terror over Gotham? Let's take a look. For Nicholson, his worst crimes include the mass poisoning of Gotham via the tainted household products, and then later unleashing his lethal gas over the anniversary parade. The total casualty count is unknown, but probably in the several hundreds conservatively, and along the way, there are some victims here and there, such as those from the mob and other innocent bystanders in the art museum. For Ledger's Joker, his worst crimes include holding 2 ferries worth of people hostage, both of which he did try to blow up at midnight, threatening to destroy a hospital which was later evacuated, but it's likely that he would have just blown it even if it wasn't, and then we have the deaths of several members of the mob, along with some key Gotham officials, most notably Rachel Dawes. So from a kill count perspective, Ledger's Joker comes in comparatively lower, but in large part because either he was stopped in time or the crisis was averted somehow, such as the evacuation of the hospital or when Gordon fakes his death after shielding the mayor. But even if Ledger's Joker was successful in his attempts, it's suggestible that his kill count still wouldn't top that of Nicholson's scale. So in terms of their evil deeds, I think it's safe to say that Nicholson trumps Ledger in this respect. But actions don't account for the whole picture, and for that we'll have to take a look at their origins and motivations. His origin is speculative, but it's suggestible that he had an abusive father, was former military in light of his weapon proficiency, and had some past run-ins with the mob that may have led to his wife's demise. So here is a man who has suffered much, which has undoubtedly led to a tainted worldview which he imposes on others. Along the way, he picks up a secondary objective, that being his intrigue with Batman, wanting to force his hand into breaking his one rule. Batman presents a major dilemma for Ledger's Joker. Joker suspects that Batman is a byproduct of some form of tragedy, but yet he has still retained his morals, unlike his degenerate self. Like him, Batman has faced the crucible, but has emerged unscathed. That is a discrepancy that Ledger's Joker cannot accept, and one that he attempts to reconcile by pushing Batman to his limit. Since Batman has demonstrated that he will not kill, Joker's next best attempt is to produce a variant of the trolley problem, making it such that if he saves Rachel, then Dent is indirectly condemned to death or vice versa. Either way, it's a lose-lose scenario, and Batman faces some indirect guilt on his hands. A stain on his soul, so to speak, comprising a little push that inches him closer to the same madness of Ledger's Joker. As for Nicholson's Joker, he was a high-ranking member of the mob who became disfigured after the betrayal from his boss as punishment for his affair with Alicia. But even before his disfigurement, Nicholson's Joker already had some narcissistic disorders hinted at by how he admires himself in the mirror. If a normally healthy person were to become scarred like him, a freak of society with chalk-white skin, luminous green hair capped off with a permanent devious grin, that person would likely face some mental issues as well. So we can imagine how much more that would affect someone as narcissistic as Nicholson's Joker, someone who wants his face on the dollar bill. It naturally drove him insane as depicted by how he talks to himself and his generally disturbing behavior. Of the two Jokers, it would appear that Ledger's Joker has the more tragic backstory, one surrounded by abuse and tragic loss, the circumstances of which were likely beyond his control. Nicholson's Joker, on the other hand, was already evil since his younger days, and the cause of his transformation was due to criminal activities of his own volition, which resulted in him being at Ace Chemicals. In light of all that, Ledger's Joker appears to be the more sympathetic one, which brings us next to the mental stability of these two Jokers, or rather the lack thereof. Both of them exhibit some level of antisocial personality disorder, but Nicholson's Joker appears to have had these tendencies since his youth. Both of them have little regard for human life, and both are unpredictable. But Nicholson's Joker takes the cake in terms of absolute instability. The fact that he can execute his dependable right-hand man in an instant speaks volumes about his mental state. In comparison, Ledger's Joker is relatively composed, and you could even go so far as to say that he is more vengeful than anything. This brings up the topic of whether Ledger's Joker is more to blame for his crimes, given his relatively healthier mental state. If someone commits evil acts because they are mentally unsound, does that make them less culpable for their actions? If so, then Ledger's Joker might have the edge in terms of having more evil motivations. That argument does have some merit, but the question is whether that's enough to offset the evil intentions of Nicholson's Joker. For Ledger's Joker, his intention is more apparent, that being he wants to prove that deep down, everyone is depraved in nature, and that when push comes to shove, everyone is capable of committing the worst atrocities. As for Nicholson's motivation, he starts out with good old revenge and taking over the mob, then escalating into terrorizing all of Gotham with his unique brand of poison. In some twisted sense, Nicholson's Joker is also grieving over the loss of his social acceptance, which he tries to regain by experimenting on Alicia, turning her into a version of himself. When that doesn't work, he turns his attention to Vicky instead. It's no coincidence that his victims die bearing a similar grin to his, perhaps signifying a desire for others to conform to his image. If he can't be like the rest of the world, then the world must become like him. Unlike Ledger's Joker, Nicholson's Joker doesn't have as clear a motivation in terms of his endgame. But perhaps the crux of all the death and destruction he caused is simply to bring Gotham to its knees so that he can rule over it. Basically, he's a killer clown on a mission of conquest. On a smaller scale, his actions also serve to vent his own resentment onto his environment, as well as to compete with Batman for the media's attention. So while both of these Jokers have motivations that are devious, Nicholson's Joker has the more wicked goal of simply spreading destruction out of a sick sense of enjoyment and the notion of conquest. Of course, Ledger's Joker also enjoys it, but only insofar as it aligns with his goal of proving his point. If you were convinced of a false truth that others were ignorant of, and you tried revealing that truth, it's a misguided goal, no doubt, but certainly less egregious than causing suffering simply because it appeals to you. And there are limits to him proving his point, most notably seen when he shows he's willing and happy to die if it makes Batman break his one rule. Nicholson's Joker, in terms of his motivation, is a lot more unhinged and probably boundless in its scope. So based on his higher casualty count, combined with an insatiable appetite for destruction for his enjoyment, with also the way he treats those in his inner social circle, perhaps it's fitting to conclude that Nicholson's Joker reigns supreme as the more evil of the two. Given that this is a Joker versus Joker topic, for the sake of levity, we can speculate as to which Joker would win in a physical matchup. Of course, it depends on the specific situation, but more often than not, I think Ledger's Joker would come out victorious. Nicholson's Joker might be victorious if the situation is suited to his unique style of trickery, allowing him to exploit the use of his uncanny gadgets. But odds are that Ledger's Joker would be the victor given that he's in better physical condition and his weapon proficiency. But which Joker do you think deserves the label of being more evil? Agree or disagree? Let me know your case in the comments below.